On Solana, we have a very different staking architecture from Ethereum. We kind of took that concept over. We do not have as many of the inefficiencies that Ethereum has.
Ethereum a few months ago, a 40-day wait period to stake. That's insane. That's never been a thing on Solana.
So the chain is slowly maturing. There's still this short-term mindset. As we mature, we will slowly evolve to having more stake.
What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Next Billion podcast, where we're talking to the builders, the entrepreneurs, the people that are doing awesome stuff. And one of those people is joining me today. We've got Jay from Sanctum, and we're going to be talking about staking and all of the lovely world of, making sure that blockchains actually run and validate blocks. But Jay, it's a pleasure to have you on the podcast today.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me over. It's a great pleasure to be here.
Absolutely, man. And we've been talking a little bit recently, but then also previous to that in your days at Socian as well, and sort of what you guys have been transitioning and doing since then. But maybe for those not familiar, before we get into what's Sanctum, maybe sort of what's been your journey thus far in crypto? Like what brought you to the crypto land and to where you guys are today?
Sure. So personally, I was in school back in 2021 still. Yeah, I was still studying. And then my co-founders, basically they worked on the SPL stake pool program over in Solana. They helped audit and work on it. And then we received the grant from the foundation to work on stake pool back in 2021. And this was called Socian. So we were the second stake pool after Marinade. We quickly realized soon after that with the stake pool was possibly not the right approach, right? I mean, they had their advantages, but it was not quite that big giant business that we wanted to build. So we pivoted quite quickly and we've been exploring options. We were still really interested in the liquid staking space, but we wanted to explore a different approach to it from first principles, basically.
Right. And I remember when Socian launched, like, firstly, you guys were like one of the first sort of pools out at the time, right? And secondly, it came at a time when everyone was earning billion% yields all over the place. And maybe that was something, do you think that people, like nowadays, everyone's quite familiar with Solana staking. It's a big thing. Institutions are talking about staking and all this kind of stuff. But maybe a couple of years ago, that wasn't the case because everyone was kind of distracted by the flashy numbers elsewhere. Do you think that was, part of what people were thinking or interpreting, like Solana staking?
I think it's very possible that people weren't so interested in like staking per se. I think back in the heyday, we had plenty of SOL staked in our stake pool. I think at one point we were like 200 million TVL or something like that. But
huge.
Yeah, huge. But in terms of like relatively, actually, like the percentage of liquid stake SOL on Solana has never quite exceeded 4%. So actually, it's a very meager sum. So even though the sum seems like inflated, I remember back then there was like Marinade, Lido, not Jito yet. They came in the last year or so. But all of these like juggernauts will not be able to crack that 4%, which was super, super interesting.
Why do you think that is? What's the deal with that?
So I can't be sure, but on Solana, we have a very different staking architecture from Ethereum. So when they developed Lido, it was a response to people wanting to use their Ethereum for collateral, especially in a time where, like you said, right, rates were high, right? So there needed to be a balance between decentralizing the network and keeping the network secure by staking your ETH and as well as liquid staking. Back then, Ethereum had the beacon chain and staking meant locking up your Ethereum. So there was a trade-off and Lido was the perfect solution. It was not a perfect solution, right? It had its flaws, but it was the perfect solution for Ethereum at that point. When it came to Solana, we kind of took that concept over. But on Solana, I think we do not have as many of the inefficiencies that Ethereum has. So for example, a normal small staker can stake to a validator super easily, right? If you open a Phantom wallet or Solflare wallet, all you need to do is just stake to the validator. And it used to be even smaller than one SOL, but now you can, if you have one SOL, you can stake with a validator. It's just so easy. And the unstake and the stake periods, right, the cooldown periods are so short, at most like 2 days. So there really isn't that much of incentive to use like the stake pool. So even though the stake pool is super battle tested, right, the contract, but some stakers from what we've heard, they're still wary. I mean, smart contract is a smart contract. So yeah, basically that. And I also think it's a bit of a mindset thing. So like on Ethereum, a lot of the ETH hits are quite like die hard They think it's like this ultrasound money to hold for like 15, 20 years. But I think on Sol, the chain is slowly maturing. But I think back then and now there's still this short-term mindset. So it's like, I'm going to hold Sol for maybe a year or 2 or 3 and then dump it. So as we mature, I think we will slowly evolve to having more stake basically.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, I remember when Ethereum a few months ago, it was something like a 40-day wait period to stake onto there, right? And it had there was a backlog in the queue and all this kind of stuff. To me, that's insane. But also, that's never been a thing on Solana, right? If you want to stake, you literally just press it within whatever wallet you want to stake wherever, or there's many websites, all over the place, and then you're in the next epoch. It's done, and the epochs are quick, right? So I definitely think that was something. But you mentioned there like the mindset of Solana's been sort of short-term-ish. Do you think that that's maybe been influenced by all of the craziness that happened like a year ago with FTX and all that kind of stuff? Maybe as Solana grows, it will maybe build more of this solid mindset, perhaps?
Yeah, I think as Solana bounced back from last year's, the FTX debacle, I think it quickly will establish itself again as like this Lindy effect that it survived that I think ETH had when they crashed to $80 in the previous cycle. So we kind of had our moment, and then we're here to stay. And I think people's mindset will change. They'll shift towards, I think it's less of staking, because like staking has always taken off on Solana. It's more of using SOL as collateral. Yeah, I think that would change. Looking at SOL as an asset to hold for the long term. Yeah.
Yeah. And I guess for people that are looking at a liquid stake versus when we're talking about liquid staking or like direct to the chain staking, maybe you want to go over, before we get into sort of Sanctum, and that's maybe a segue to everything that's been happening with Social and all that sort of stuff. But what's the difference between, say, direct staking to a chain and liquid staking, and why would you use liquid staking? Are there other stuff going on other than, hey, I can use my stake in collateral in some DeFi platform?
Right. So basically, staking on Solana, it's kind of simple. All you need to do is that there are validators that run a validator, and you delegate your SOL to them to stake. So you get a stake account, right? And then that represents your stake, essentially. When you do liquid staking, how it works now is that all the stake pools, basically they run a stake pool program, which will basically take your SOL, right? They will delegate the SOL to their choice, right? That depends on the delegation strategy. And then they will give you a token, right? The stake pool token or a LST, right? And that's how it works on Solana. And then you can use the LST to do different things. For example, deposit as collateral, use it to trade. Some interesting thing that's happened on Solana is that the introduction of validator LSTs. So Lane, a big validator, as well as Cogent Crypto has done it, which is they've just set up stake pools that delegate exclusively to their own validator. So this is something I think has never been seen before on any other chain. And it's going to be quite interesting in the future, I believe.
So Step runs a validator, and I always talk about people, all these different DeFi apps and different other things. Everyone should be running a validator, I think, for their community. And that's good for the chain, it's good for the network and decentralization and all that sort of stuff, getting more people staking. Do you think that that's a reasonable reality? That, like, at the moment, the people that are running validators are kind of like specialized in running validators. Are we moving towards a world where every app maybe, or each like maybe NFT community or something has their own validator? Pros and cons of such a world?
So basically that kind of brings to where like what we're building basically. So as we were at Social and we decided to pivot, but we still wanted to work on liquid staking, our vision was that basically there would be a future, right, of these multi LSTs. Also is liquid and should be liquid, and that's what we live in. Then the question became like how and what do we need to do? So the first thing that we did was that we built up this small little tool which was called Unstake It, right? What it did was that it was basically this reserve pool of SOL, and you could basically give your stake accounts, which you stake a validator, to us, and we would exchange it immediately for SOL. And in return, we will take your stake accounts and we will unstake it at the end of the epoch. So basically what this does is instantly unstake your validator without the weights. So this was kind of like the first step, right? It's the first step to changing your mindset on okay, when you stake your SOL, I need to wait, right? I need to wait for it to be, I do all these things. I think most people don't even understand like the concept of like cool down and stuff like that. So it's like, okay, now I don't need to wait, right? So what's the next thing that we need to do? So if there's a future where there are many LSTs, then we need the LST SOL pool to be really, really concentrated, and everybody should share and tap into this liquidity. So what we did is that we accepted LSTs. So an interesting insight that we had is that LSTs are just commoditized wrappers of stake accounts, essentially, right? At the end of the day, they are all just stake accounts, and you can deduce it to the very Lamport. So we accepted LSTs into the pool. And we did a router as well, which you could deposit these stake accounts into stake pools and then withdraw them. So it unlocked a lot of routes. So what this does now is that LST swaps are super price efficient with very minimal slippage, and you can do big sizes even though you don't have XO pools. So what I mean by that is that a common problem of like smaller stake pools is that you need to make sure that your LST is very, very liquid, right? If not, what's the point of LST if you can't swap it to SOL? Yeah. So with us, with Sanctum, basically any LST can have very deep liquidity through us. So Lane SOL, which has only probably about 4K USD in like Orca and Radium, can do massive six-figure USD in USD swaps from LST to SOL, which is quite amazing, right? And so we realized, okay, this is going to work, right? We were building the infrastructure, and let's work to that and build more infrastructure. And that's kind of where we led to now.
So the instant unstake is coming from this pool of SOL, which is not staked anywhere. It's just sitting there as SOL, right?
Yep.
And like, is that your pool? Is that people can, put their SOL into there for a different type of yield, or where does that come from? Because the question is, I guess, how does that scale as well, right? Like, okay, tomorrow you get, super successful and there's hundreds of millions of dollars worth of SOL in there. Does the pool also grow, or what's your strategy around that?
So first of all, this is our most basic products, is the reserve pool. At first, we funded it ourselves. Then we had some like private depositors who really believed in like Solana, and they wanted it to succeed. So they have the deposit. So we probably won't ever accept deposits because like the yield is just not good, right? It probably does. It's SOL sitting there, so the yield is not fantastic. So you actually don't need that much, right? As in to be capital efficient. You just need the right amount. You don't want to have underutilization of the SOL, basically. So yeah, if we do get a lot bigger, of course we will try and get more deposits in, but based on like risk parameters, for now it's perfectly fine.
That's actually a good comment, because what is the average that people are staking and unstaking, right? Like if the average that people stake and unstake is, I don't know, 100 SOL, then do you really need a pool that's giant? Or like with whales, like how many whales are the ones which would be wanting to instantly unstake like 300,000 at a time or something like that? Right. And if it's only like 3 wallets on the chain, then it's probably not really useful to have a pool any bigger than that, right? And even if those whales, want to do that, they can just unstake and wait until the end of the epoch normally.
So basically, there are 2 periods in our experience that there was like max utilization. The first was the slope wallet hack, right? When people were desperate to unstake their SOL. For some reason, I can't remember why. I think they were misguided. They thought they needed to dump it just because they staked with slope. The second was, I think it was during the FTX debacle when MSO depegged. So it was these 2 that there was max utilization. So when we do like risk management, we will plan for such situations and make sure that there's enough SOL for those specific situations. If not, right, it's meant for the little guy to unstake their validator stakes. So our pricing is dynamic. So like if you take a small percentage of the pool when you unstake, yeah, it's really minimal fees.
And I guess in this world where you've got a lot of different validators making their own stake token, one of the things I've noticed is all of these DeFi protocols, they list a lot of these LSTs already. There's like 4 or 5 or something on there. Now, are they going to list 50? Probably not, right? And how the world currently works is they sort of look at liquidity and they back the ones or support the ones into their lender that have liquidity and so on. But what you're saying is all of these, let's say you've got 100 validators using Sanctum and using a system where people can create a liquid staked token for their validator, and there's instant liquidity between that. Is there a way to maybe people get usefulness out of that in other DeFi protocols? I remember we spoke about sort of all these things could go into like a giant pool, and then you just have that pool token, which represents like all of the LSTs, not just your specific one?
So you mentioned that there are DeFi protocols that are opening. So MarginFi, they're one of the best examples. They opened LST. They call it LST. And they have very similar vision to us, which is that they believe that LSTs are just commoditized wrappers of stakes. So anyone and everyone should have their own LST, right? So kind of said that it's unlikely there'll be 50. I kind of want to push back a little bit. We believe that there will be an infinite amount of LSTs at the end of the day. In a few years' time, there's going to be like thousands, maybe even millions of LSTs. So maybe I could point to some examples. So firstly, like the validator LSTs, right? For example, Sanctum supports all kinds of LSTs as long as you set up a stake pool, right? As the SPL stake pool, we support you automatically. You don't need to come to us and ask us. What you need to do is just give us like the name of your LST so that we can have the graphical interface. But other than that, we automatically support. Everybody can tap into this deep liquidity in the first place. So any validator should be able to set up an LST today, right? It's not a problem for them and they can instantly get that liquidity. One problem that you would have as a validator LST or as maybe another type of LST, which I can elaborate later, is that you won't be able to be integrated, right? If like the DeFi protocols that easily. It's a big hassle, especially you're small. And there must be like some...
And sorry, that's like part of the reason we discussed that people would want an LST in the first place,
correct.
Right?
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
Use it as collateral.
Yeah, so to elaborate here, we were kind of pushing forward this validator LST initiative, encouraging validators to set up their own LSTs and working together to move this stake over to this better sort of interface, this new medium. And what we're trying to do, and this is a little hint of what we're doing in the future, we're going to launch a sort of, call it the infinity pool. So this infinity pool will hold a bunch of LSTs, right? Like all kinds of LSTs. Jito, so if Step Finance has a LST, Step so, and they hold it in this pool, and this will make sure that there's super efficient LST swaps, right? They can just swap around so easily. In a way, you can kind of visualize it as a curve, stable swap of LSTs. And then they'll be able to get an LP token. So for example, if you are a Step staker and you stake with the Step LST, you can deposit into this infinity pool, get a LP token, let's call it infinity soul or something like that. And then if infinity soul, you can then go and deposit into MarginFi because we will handle the integrations for you instead. So yeah, the validator does not need to worry about that. Doesn't need to go and beg like Magic Eden to list LSTs, for example. Yeah, we'll be doing that.
Yeah, I think that's just fundamentally better in so many ways, right? Because there is that barrier to entry that if you're some smaller project, some smaller validator or something like that, and you're like, man, I'd love to have a liquid stake token for our thing, but I know that some big DeFi protocol is never going to list me because my TVL's not big enough. Well, now you actually have the opportunity to do that. Not only can you make the LST, but then you can just piggyback off this existing pool that's already integrated with these DeFi lenders. Then you can go and tell all your users, hey, by the way, you can not only stake with us, but you can also use that as collateral elsewhere in DeFi. And that's probably like going to unlock a lot of people. Like, what's the feedback been so far when you've been speaking to teams on this kind of stuff?
Validators seem to be very, very excited about the idea. Some of them are quite concerned. Their main concerns basically are regulatory issues, whether they're allowed to open an LST. Most of their problems are the integration and the liquidity, which Sanctum solves for them. So it's mainly the American side and regulations, which we are trying to make sure that it's 100% clear for them.
Interesting. Yeah, it's on them to find. And there's a lot of geographically distributed validators these days as well. Like there's a lot more.
Yeah.
We recently moved our validator to Japan. And it's cool to see sort of more people from all over the world participating in consensus and stuff like that. But you mentioned other types of LSTs. I'm curious, are you able to talk about that? Is there anything there planned?
Yeah, so we've been exposed to this idea of STETH, right? As in back from STETH, MSO, and then validator LST is kind of an evolution of this idea. But what if we really take it to its core concept, which is that LSTs are just liquid SOL, right? So any kind of liquid stake SOL. So why do I need to be a validator to run an LST, right? Why can't George, right? George run a LST and delegate to any validator that he wants, right? Or maybe he doesn't even need to choose, like let someone else choose the validator for him. Why can't he set one? Why can't Ansem set one, right? And then basically like people can buy into it. So they can buy into a Ansem SOL or just Ansem, for example. And imagine if you set like 100% management fees, for example, all the staking return goes to Ansem, right? And these users, right, they can support Ansem, right, by buying into this stake pool, and he gets the staking returns, and then he can decide like how am I going to distribute these rewards. And for the users, right, they hold this Ansem token, and they don't lose money. I mean, they lose staking returns, but these users are slightly different, right? They're not so price sensitive. It becomes more of a way of credential, right? And it's kind of like friend tech, but without the Ponzi.
Wow, that's cool. That's like it's kind of like a referral scheme kind of thing where, yeah, like you stake with your favorite influencer, and then maybe the influencer's doing something. Maybe they're building a project, or maybe whatever, right? Like there is some income, some revenue from people that are staking with them, and they can do whatever with it.
Or maybe let's throw another idea, like about maybe it could be a way to indicate like social reputation in the space, like people with the most like certain type of SOL. Like for example, I set up a stake pool, right? Let's say like Toli, for example, and Toli has the most amount of people who has his like LST, and that would indicate his social hierarchy, right? It's in a kind of a way, like he has the most clout, and that's a really good way, right? As in, it becomes a good way to determine based on the network, a network chosen social network, which is quite cool in its own way. Yeah.
Oh man, I'm now thinking that we need to build dashboards for this kind of stuff to show like a leaderboard of people, right? Or like Twitter accounts that have the largest stakes and stuff like that. But all of those people which aren't validators, they would be staking to a validator or maybe a set of validators or something like that, right? So ultimately, all of that SOL like actually goes to some real validator at the end of the day. It's really sort of up to them, who they want to stake with.
Correct. It's just a different way to look at it. So the staking becomes more of the fundamental back end of things rather than being the front end. So when we think about like Jito, so we think of staking, right? We just think of staking first, but it doesn't necessarily have to be that way. It can be the back end supporting a more creative idea, for example.
Absolutely. And so where are you guys at now in Sanctum? What are you looking to do? I know you're talking to different teams. I think at Step we're super excited about what you guys are doing. So where are you guys at? Like you've already launched, you've already got the SDKs out, the docs are there. What's next steps?
Like I mentioned, we're going to launch the Infinity Pool. This should be start of next year. We're in the works. In the works right now. We're working really hard on that. Partnering with Validators as well. We are going to relaunch our stake pool. Our stake pool will likely delegate exclusively to Validator LSTs. So we're kind of like going to encourage validators to set things up and for users to move over as well. And yeah, we're definitely going to explore the social element of LSTs as well. So these are the three main things that we have in the works. And for now, Sanctum works as usual. Like if you're using Jupyter and you're swapping big amounts of LSTs, you're probably swapping on Sanctum.
And if any validator sets up on Sanctum today, they will be added to the Jupyter routes?
So if you're a validator and you set up an LST, you are supported. What you need to do is just let us know, right? Reach out to us so that we can add your logo and list you so that you can be found on Jupyter. Like give us the name of your SOL and maybe a logo and then immediately your users will be able to swap directly to your LST.
I love it. I think it's really cool, and really excited for the launch of a whole bunch of new things next year. So, what's your take? I guess, sort of generally looking back on staking and in general, perhaps like, are we seeing more interest in institutions doing it? Like, that's one question I've had, or we've had with our validator is, are there like VCs, institutions which have a large position of, say, SOL, and they're doing nothing with it? And is this a sort of market to tackle, or do you think it's going to be a growing market for that sort of thing, or is it all sort of retail? A lot of these, validator staking and all that sort of stuff. What's your take on the type of people that are interested in this kind of thing?
I think, firstly, the question about VCs that are there VCs that don't do anything with their SOL? I'm quite surprised, and I have to tell you the answer is actually yes, right? I remember, I think this was last year or the start of this year, and I asked a certain VC and were they staking their SOL, and they were like, oh no, it's all sitting on a SEX. I was like, whoa. I was like, why aren't you doing anything with it? But other than that, I think generally most other like institutions actually hold their SOL and stake it. They're just more careful with it. So, for example, I know Marinate Native, their no smart contract or a very low smart contract, the native staking app, right? They're trying to push for institutions. I know Jito is as well. They have like Coinbase custody. So there are these really good choices out there. There's also retail. Yeah, I think retail is quite happy to stake. So like the staking percentage of SOL on Solana has always been quite strong. I think we have always had a good track record of staking. Just maybe we need more and more liquid staking so that there's more TVL on the chain.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, this all sounds really good. Where should people go to find out more? Blogs, Twitters, website, lots of stuff.
Sure. I think you can find out more on our Twitter is twitter.com/Sanctum SO at Sanctum SO. And if you can find our docs there as well, join our Telegram group. And of course, this podcast, there's a lot of info as well. So you should definitely listen to it. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll put links all around, up, down, below, on the sides, wherever it might be. But we'll put links below to go and check out Sanctum. But look, it's been a pleasure talking today, Jay. Look, I mean, we're probably going to do something at Step very soon with this. I think a lot of people will. And I agree with this future of there just being a lot of different liquid staked versions of Sol and anyone who's running a validator. Or I really love the idea for like influencers and that sort of thing. So watch this space. It's going to be really cool. But thank you so much for coming on today, Jay. And wish you all the best.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Awesome. Cheers. Bye-bye.